This is Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM. I'm Scott Bertram, and with me today is State Senator Mike Shirkey, who is also the Senate Majority Leader. Senator, how are you doing?
On a fine, bright, blue, cool summer morning, how can you be doing bad?
This is the way every day should start. Yeah, it's fantastic. Find the Senator online, senatormikeshirkey.com. Go to Facebook, search for Senator Mike Shirkey. Senator, of course, we start this conversation with a pretty big accomplishment, something we've talked about, I know, since the very first time. I bet we probably talked here on Radio Free Hillsdale, and it's done. Auto insurance reform is done. Passed the House, passed the Senate, Governor signing. This is a pretty big accomplishment. You know, top line it for us. What does it mean for most Michiganders?
Well, what it really means is that, Scott, is that people will now have choices that they can make to determine how much risk they want to take and how much they want to spend on auto insurance. I'm very careful to explain that this is a phased-in process, and managing expectations is of key. If somebody was to choose to continue the exact same coverage they have today, they'll probably actually pay more in the long run. But with all the options that people have now, those that are on Medicare, for instance, above the age 65, they can opt out completely of PIP and save both their PIP line item and most of their MCCA line item that are currently in our deck statements or our insurance bills. And so, but it's really important for people to understand that yes, you have choices now. And that means the responsibility for assessing what that means is on the individual driver. Heretofore, you really didn't have any choices to make because you were buying the best of the best, and you didn't have to worry about it. And so I want to make sure that we are over-communicating that not so subtle change in the laws.
And, choice is a good thing. It's what we demand in virtually every part of our life. We want to choose the best cell phone, the best cell phone plan. We want to choose our cable service, or we want to choose something online, or we want to choose our school. And so this, instead of locking people into one specific plan, allows them to make their choice. And, as you mentioned, shop around, see the savings, and then make the best choice for themselves.
That's exactly right. I had 4 goals in reforming insurance. Number one goal was to provide choices. Number 2 goal was to provide a cost structure to base fees on. Number 3, the goal was to have that cost structure based on a fee schedule that's already heavily monitored and cost controlled, and that's Medicare. And then the 4th is to open up our markets and have an even more competitive auto insurance market in Michigan. The last of those 4, I think we still have a little bit more work to do.
2 questions that I have heard from people, literally, walking into my office. I'll ask you. One is, when will the savings begin? When does this sort of take effect? When will we see a difference if we choose to make that change to the coverage?
Well, the answer to that question is in July of 2020 is when the options for different options for PIP choice will become available. And then another year later, the cost controls go into effect. And then ultimately, Scott, there's going to be a lot of savings associated with, we made a lot of changes in the laws regarding fraud and empowered the Michigan State Police to a higher level, and those will probably take 3 to 4 years to fully come to flower. So I call it a 3-phase process, but the first phase will occur in July of 2020.
The other question that I get, Senator Mike Shirkey, is why now? Why this combination of leaders? You and Governor Whitmer. There was Republican control of the governor's mansion and the 2 chambers for the past years, and it didn't get done. Was the governor integral to this process? Why was this the combination that worked?
Well, I think you can answer that question about my governor. I mean, she had made it clear that she didn't want anything to do with this until we got roads done, and we made it clear that it was the number one priority, and we were going to get it done. And so once we had never happened before, unanimous votes from the Republican Senate caucus and from the Republican House caucus, then I think my governor decided that maybe she should engage, and she did, to her credit. And it was fruitful engagement. We made a few changes that were necessary, and then got her to the point where she was willing, very willing, and proud to sign it. The difference, frankly, is this. Speaker Lee Chatfield and I made it a pact with one another from the day we first got into office, and that is we're going to work together and not try to one-up each other. And I think it's made a big difference. Senator
Mike Shirkey, the Senate Majority Leader here in Michigan on Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM. I'm Scott Bertram. Before we transition off of this, the auto insurance reform was the number one priority, as you mentioned, for you and the House Speaker, and we've talked about it for years. So, what rises to the top now of the agenda in the Michigan Senate?
Next is budget and roads. They're going to be prosecuted in parallel, and if they happen to come together into one package, that'll be wonderful, but they don't have to be. And we're going to be putting the same kind of shoulder into long-term sustained road funding and infrastructure funding that we did into auto insurance reform. Both chambers, the House and the Senate, have their own task forces working on it, and I think people will be very pleased with how prudent we are and careful we are with taxpayer money. I'm not going to say that there will be no increase in fees, but it's not going to be anywhere near what our governor has proposed earlier in this session.
All right, Senator. We're talking this morning just as the Mackinac Policy Conference for 2019 has wrapped up last week. Tell people about what happens there and what happens in Mackinac that doesn't or can't happen in Lansing when all of you are there.
Yeah, it's a very interesting phenomena, but it's not something unlike we've all experienced. Sometimes you need to get out of where you normally are to allow your mind and your conversation to go where it doesn't typically go. And it's a gorgeous environment. There are some terrific speakers that come in to challenge paradigms and challenge thought processes, and it just provides for a different venue. And that's really the only explanation I have for it. It is a major investment of time and cost, but I think generally speaking, it provides good fruit. This year's focus was mostly on education reform, in which we have, unfortunately, because of the auto insurance reform, it kind of clouded all the conversations on education. But Michigan, we still have some major hurdles to overcome with regards to the output of our education system, and that is not an indictment of teachers; it's an indictment of the system.
Senator Mike Shirkey with us. Also saw toward the tail end of this past week a little news, and this is something, again, that I know it's nice when we talk about things and then they come to fruition. But term limits, I know you were in favor of term limits previously and believe that to be a mistake, actually. What have you seen with term limits in action? And then I know you're set for a ballot initiative in 2021. Tell us a bit about that.
So, term limits are firmly secured in our Constitution, and you were correct. I voted for it, and I've had buyer's remorse ever since. And now I've been able to experience it firsthand for the last 8 years. Take a look at the House of Representatives, for instance. I believe and I'm going to have a study done on this to make sure that my data is correct, but I'm pretty sure it will be, is that the age of those serving just continues to ratchet down. And that doesn't mean that people who are younger can't contribute, but there's something to be said about world experience and real world experience and working in a job environment, and we have a lot of people that serve that have had minimal opportunity to work in the private sector. I also believe that the natural term limits of every 2 and 4 years is the best term limits there are. And, complex issues like auto insurance reform, frankly, would not have taken 40 years if we'd not had term insurance, because if we had not had term limits,
right.
Because that gives bureaucrats and special interest groups, all they got to do is get somebody's attention for a couple of years, and then they're gone, and they got to start the education process again. So I have been amazed at the number of people who have said thank you for saying what we've been thinking, but we've been too afraid to say so. And I'm just the kind of guy that's going to press the question. Whether it'll be successful or not, Scott, I really don't know, because I know that even at the state level, once you're elected as a senator or as a representative, you all of a sudden become part of that new fraternity or sorority that nobody trusts. But I'm committed to pushing it and advancing it and engaging with interest across the state, and frankly engaging with media outlets like you to drive the conversation. And if the voters, because ultimately voters will have to approve it,
right?
Tying it together maybe with part-time, tying it together with putting into the Constitution that the legislature can never add post-service benefits. Those kinds of things, I think, coupled together, might give people enough confidence to take some action.
And we should mention. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I just want to say it is not my most urgent project. I just want to get it. I wanted to get it on the table because I'm not afraid of it, and I don't think we should be.
And I was going to point out, I had tweeted this out, and someone had responded, oh, sure, someone gets in office, and then they want to get rid of term limits once they're there so they can stay forever. This is time. It's an initiative in 2021. You wouldn't see the benefit of this, meaning these term limits, even if successful, would not be taken off of your time in office.
The fact of the matter is it wouldn't be taking off the time of office of anybody currently serving when the election occurred.
Right.
It would be 8 years beyond that date where they would begin, go into effect, so that nobody could selfishly say I did it because of, my own terms. But no. That's not the point. That's not the point whatsoever.
Senator,
I'm getting too old, man. I can't serve that much longer.
Senator Mike Shirkey. Find him online at senatormikeshirkey.com. Go to Facebook, Senator Mike Shirkey. We look forward to seeing the auto insurance reforms being implemented. Congratulations on getting that big rock pushed up the hill. And we look forward to talking next time, Senator.
Take care, Scott. Have a great day.